Welcome to the new podcast, In the Garden with Susan. I'm your host, Susan Ladner. I will aim to bring you top quality information on how to save open pollinated seeds, grow a garden, and preserve what you grow. Every Wednesday, I'll be sharing practical tips and techniques to help you on your journey to food security. Join me as I preserve the abundance of produce that my garden provides. Learn new ways of putting food away for the winter and some old ways that are from another century. You can find this podcast on Shopify and at my website. Come on, let's go wander down to the garden and awaken the dreams, history, and love that is held inside every seed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In the Garden with Susan. And I just want to start off with a little announcement about the Floral Flavor Challenge that's going on. And so it will probably be lasting for most of the summer or until we finish the Flower Power series. And so basically, all you have to do is listen to the latest episode. And you can find this on my website at www.gardenfairybotanicals.ca. The episodes are on Rumble, they're on YouTube, on Spotify. Anywhere that you're listening to this right now is basically, like you're listening to it, so you're hearing about it. And so I just want to put it out there that, feel free to like and subscribe if you're listening on Rumble or YouTube. And so all you have to do is create a dish, a drink, or a dessert with edible flowers. And it can be any of the edible flowers that I talk about on the show, or maybe there's an edible flower you know about it, or something that you make all the time when these flowers come out. So it can be any sort of edible flower, and make sure they're edible. I know last night I was thinking, are poppy flowers edible? Because I had these poppies open and they were so beautiful. And so I looked it up, and poppy flowers are not edible. So that was kind of, I've started thinking everything's edible, and it's not. So make sure it's an edible flower, and then take a photo of it and share it on Instagram or Facebook. And if you could tag at Garden Fairy Seeds on Instagram and at Garden Fairy Botanicals on Facebook, and use the hashtag Floral Flavor Challenge. And so every entry, every image that is shared will, it's a ticket to be entered in to win a $25 gift certificate. And so if you make 10 dishes or drinks or whatever, or desserts, if you decorate a cake with flowers, and every entry that is a separate entry in. So you could do 10 images and you get 10 entries into the draw. And this will happen at the end of the series. And I really don't know when that is, because I keep finding more and more edible flowers. But I'm pretty sure, it will be at the end of summer. And so this challenge is open. I believe it can be open to everyone. I'm pretty sure everywhere I can send seeds. And I know I can send them, it can only be seeds. So the $25 gift certificate, if you're in Canada and, maybe in the fall, there'll be no expiry on it. So maybe in the fall you're looking and you're like, I want to get some of these Jerusalem artichokes. You can do that if you're in Canada, or maybe next spring you want to use it. But if you're outside of Canada, I can only send you seeds. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what everybody creates. I know I'm getting really excited about starting to think about some of the dishes I can make and adding more flowers into my food. And so today we're going to start with chamomile. And I think everybody knows about chamomile. It's a popular herb, and it's known for its soothing, mild apple-like flavor and aromatic qualities. and it's often used for its calming effects, and it's mostly a staple in herbal teas. And so there's some varieties of chamomile. I know in my garden I have 3 kinds growing right now, and I should have gone out to see. I think the one's bold gold, and then I have German chamomile growing, and that this is the variety that's most commonly used for tea and medicinal purposes, and it has a slightly sweet floral taste, and it is considered to be stronger in flavor, and it's more effective medicinally. And then there's Roman chamomile. And this is a perennial with a more mild flavor and scent compared to the German chamomile. And it's often used as a ground cover in gardens and sometimes for culinary purposes. And both types are used in similar ways, but the German chamomile is more prevalent in culinary and therapeutic applications due to its stronger flavor and aroma. And so the different ways you can use chamomile, of course, there's tea, and sometimes chamomile is used to flavor various dishes from desserts to sauces. And so everyone knows how to make tea, but you can steep 2 to 3 tablespoons of the fresh herb if you go out and pick it, and then put it in, which I have made a couple cups like this, and it's really nice when it's fresh. Or you can use 1 tablespoon of dried chamomile flowers in hot water and steep it for about 5 minutes. And then you can add honey or lemon for extra flavor. And then this is something I just discovered, is scones. You can incorporate dried chamomile and lavender into your basic scone recipe for a floral aromatic treat. You can make chamomile honey ice cream and infuse cream with chamomile flowers by heating them together. Then strain and use the cream in your favorite ice cream recipe and mix in honey for sweetness. And then there is also chamomile syrup. And I'm actually going to try to make some of this because I have so much of my chamomile volunteered. And you just make a simple syrup by simmering water, sugar, and chamomile flowers together. And you can also add in oranges and orange peels. And then this syrup can be used to sweeten drinks, lemonades, or drizzle over desserts or pancakes and ice cream. And you can also use it in your tea for extra chamomile flavor. And then you can make chamomile infused butter, and you gently heat the butter and chamomile flowers together, then strain the mixture and refrigerate. And this flavored butter can be used in baking or on top of warm bread, cooked vegetables, or fish. And so some people will bake with chamomile, and you can add the dried flowers to cookies, cakes, and breads for a subtle floral flavor. And chamomile pairs well with lemon and vanilla flavors. And you can make chamomile custards or panna cotta. And you infuse chamomile into the milk or cream when making custards, flans, or panna cotta, and the herb adds a gentle soothing flavor to these creamy desserts. You can also make chamomile rice or quinoa, and you brew the chamomile tea and use it as the cooking liquid for rice or quinoa, and it gives a mild aromatic flavor that pairs well with mild dishes or as a base for a light salad. And then you can make chamomile poached fruits, and you poach fruits like pears, apples, or peaches in a chamomile infused syrup. And this not only adds a subtle floral flavor, but it also enhances the natural sweetness of the fruits. And then you can make salad dressings and use chamomile tea or infused vinegar to make a light and fragrant vinaigrette for salads. and it pairs well with fresh garden herbs and spring greens. So very interesting, you know. Those are some things I never even thought about putting chamomile in. And so I just have one recipe because I'm actually very interested to make this, and I think I'm going to do it this week. And so I have a recipe here for chamomile orange syrup. And the ingredients are 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of dried chamomile flowers, or 1 cup of fresh flowers, and then the zest of 1 orange. And I'm actually going to do the zest and the juice. And so in a saucepan, bring the water and sugar to a boil, stirring until the sugar dissolves completely. Add the chamomile flowers and orange zest. Lower the heat and let simmer for about 10 minutes. Steep and strain, and take it off the heat and allow the mixture to steep as it cools for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how strong you want the flavors. And then strain the mixture through a fine sieve or cheesecloth to remove all the solids, and then prepare it for canning. And so while the syrup is steeping, prepare your canning jars by sterilizing them in boiling water for at least 10 minutes. And I just sterilize mine in my steam canner. And then keep the jars hot until you're ready to use them. And then can the syrup. Pour the hot syrup into the sterilized jars, leaving 1/2 inch of headspace. Wipe the rims with a clean cloth. Place the lids on the jars and make sure you sterilize the lids before. I always do that before I put them on. And screw the bands on until it's fingertip tight. Process the jars in the boiling water bath or steam canner for 10 minutes and adjust the time if you're at a high altitude. And so that is pretty amazing. I'm going to try that. And I had I think it'd be like the dandelion syrup and adding it to tea. And oh my goodness, is it ever delicious. And so, yeah, you can use this chamomile orange syrup in teas, over desserts, or as a sweetener in various recipes throughout the year. And so to preserve chamomile, the best way to preserve it is by drying the flowers and spread them on a clean surface in a dry, dark, and well-ventilated area. And once dried, store them in an airtight container away from the light. And right now I have a baking dish, like a lasagna dish, full of just single layer with the chamomile flowers drying in it. So they're not out of the light. They're just sort of sitting over by my wood stove because it's so cold here in BC that still I was having fires. I made strawberry jam on the wood stove a couple days ago, and so I have them sitting over there to sort of dry. And then also you can freeze the chamomile flowers. If you want to preserve their color and some freshness, freeze them in a single layer on a tray and then transfer them to an airtight container. And so the taste, I wanted to know about the taste differences between the varieties. And so it can vary. Between the German chamomile tends to have a more robust flavor, and the Roman chamomile is milder and slightly bittersweet. And it's used in culinary contexts where subtle flavor is desired. And so now we're moving on to something and this is exciting. Yesterday I had my first squash blossoms open, and very, very exciting. So these guys are edible, and squash blossoms, the edible flowers of the plant, are a delicacy in many cuisines around the world. And the squash blossoms are soft and delicate, and they have a mildly sweet squash-like taste. And some people say it's a sweet nectar-like taste. And They are usually harvested in the morning when they are most open, and this makes them easier to stuff and less likely to tear. And so how to use them, you can stuff them and fry them. And this is the most popular way to enjoy them. And people stuff them with cheese. Ricotta is the most common choice. Herbs and other fillings, and then dip them in a light batter and fry until golden. They are also used raw in salads. Their soft texture and subtle flavor makes them a great addition to salads. And they can also be cooked into soups and pastas. And they can be gently cooked and added to these for a touch of elegance and flavor. And so to preserve the squash blossoms, it's not really recommended because they are best used soon after harvesting. However, you can preserve them for a short time by refrigerating them. If you put them in a container lined with a paper towel and use them within 1 to 2 days. And you can also freeze them. And so you just want to wash and dry the blossoms, remove the stamens, and freeze them on a baking sheet before transferring to an airtight container. And they can be used directly from the freezer in cooked dishes. And so, of course, the frying, that's pretty straightforward. But I found a recipe that squash blossom quesadillas. And so you need squash blossoms, corn tortillas, cheese like Oaxaca or mozzarella, and a dash of salt. And you just remove the stamens from the blossoms. Place the flowers and cheese between 2 tortillas. Season with salt and cook on a hot skillet until the cheese melts and the tortillas are golden. Like, doesn't that sound good? And then also squash blossom pasta. You want to take something like fettuccine, your squash blossoms, garlic, olive oil, parmesan, and fresh herbs, and saute the garlic in olive oil. Add chopped squash blossoms and cook until softened. And then you'll want to toss that in with the cooked pasta, parmesan, and some herbs like basil or parsley. And so how interesting is that? That's some new ways of using that. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about what kind of squash blossoms are the best to eat, because I know like right now my summer squash is blossoming. I haven't gone out and looked at my winter squash, but here's sort of what I found about this is that squash blossoms can come from any squash plant. But there are some varieties that are particularly well suited for the culinary use due to the size, taste, and texture from the blossoms. And so zucchini squash blossoms are the most commonly used in cooking because they are large, easy to stuff, and have a subtle, slightly sweet flavor. Pumpkin blossoms are similar to zucchini blossoms, but they are slightly larger, and they can be also used in the same way, and they are ideal for stuffing and frying. Butternut squash blossoms are a bit smaller and more delicate than the zucchini and pumpkin blossoms, but they offer a similarly mild flavor that works well in the lighter dishes like salads and pasta. And then the yellow squash blossoms are very similar to zucchini in flavor and size, and these are versatile and can be used in a variety of dishes. And yeah, so that's that. And then now we're going to talk about yarrow. And I have an interesting story about this because last year there was no yarrow around here, and I remember I went to visit another farm and I saw the yarrow growing, and I was collecting some of the flowers because I was so excited. I find yarrow to be a very important plant. And this year, it's growing outside my place. And I just went down to my compost today, and there's all this yarrow. I'm not sure where it came from, or I know I'm going off on a little tangent here. But I have read stories in the past of when some people move somewhere, and there was especially a story that someone new came and moved into a house, and some herbs started growing around the place, and some flowers, particularly in this story, I think it was calendula, started growing there that had never been there. And someone had said this person needed the calendula, like it's something that nature was saying, this is for you to take. So I just find it so amazing that suddenly all this yarrow has showed up here. And I really don't think I missed it last year, because when I went to this other farm, like I saw it, it was on the farm in Ontario, and I loved it. And now here it is this year. And I don't think and maybe, I don't know, did I have those flowers and did the seeds get out there and down by the compost? I'm not sure if I brought them here. But anyway, that's my little tangent. So we're going to talk about yarrow, because it's on my mind and I've been seeing it. And it is known for its aromatic, slightly bitter flavor, and it's primarily used for its medicinal properties. However, the young leaves and flowers can be used in culinary applications. And young yarrow, and some of these have the leaves and the flowers. I really want to focus on the flowers, but I am going to be talking about the leaves. It's just here. So for the salads, the young yarrow leaves and flowers are edible and can add a bitter herby flavor to salads. And so they should be picked before the plant, the leaves, if you're using the leaves, it should be picked before the plant flowers for the mildest flavor. And yarrow flowers and also the leaves can be used to make an herbal tea, and it's often blended with other herbs for flavor and health benefits. And dried yarrow can be used as a seasoning in soups, stews, and sauces, much like other herbs, and it pairs well with meats like chicken and lamb. And infusions, yarrow can be used to be infused in syrups similar to the chamomile syrup, and it can be used to make bitters for cocktails. And so to preserve it, just drying is the most effective method. And harvest the yarrow flowers and leaves when they are fully open and vibrant. Tie the stems together and hang them upside down in a warm, dry, and well-ventilated area. And once completely dry, typically after a few weeks, remove the leaves and flowers from the stems and store them in an airtight container away from light and moisture. And yarrow has a bitter, pungent taste, which can be quite strong. And so it's recommended that you use it very sparingly in cooking to avoid overpowering dishes. And just going a little bit off on a side thing, I know we're not really talking about the medicinal uses, but I find this so important, this part of it, that historically yarrow has been used to aid digestion, reduce fever, and promote wound healing. And it's a potential anti-inflammatory and antiseptic properties make it popular in herbal medicine. And so it should be used cautiously, as it can cause allergic reactions in some people, especially those that are allergic to um, some of like chrysanthemums or daisies or ragweed. And it's also advised not to consume yarrow during pregnancy. And so now we're moving on to sage. And these guys in my one garden, they flowered a while ago already, and now they're going to seed. And so sage flowers offer a delightful way to add flavor and color to various dishes. And these flowers are not only beautiful, but are completely edible, and they feature a milder version of the plant's characteristic savory, slightly peppery flavor. And some ways you can use these are garnishes. So sage flowers make a beautiful edible garnish for dishes where you typically use sage leaves, and they're perfect for topping meats, pastas, or risottos. And you can put them in salads, sprinkled over the salad for a touch of color and a hint of sage flavor. You can infuse vinegar or olive oil with sage flowers to create a flavored dressing or cooking medium that carries a subtle sage aroma. And mix fresh or dried sage flowers into butter or cream, and this will make a flavorful spread for bread, crackers, or bagels. And you can incorporate sage flowers into dough for breads or scones to add a mild sage flavor. And they can also be added to drinks or as a garnish or muddled together, or a muddled ingredient. Mud, I don't even know what that means there, but for an aromatic touch. Okay, and so to preserve them, you can dry them. You can tie the sage flower stems together, hang them upside down, and once dried, store the flowers in an airtight container. And so the dried sage flowers can be used similarly to the fresh, but will have a more concentrated flavor. And you can also freeze them in ice cubes for drinks, or you can just freeze them on a tray for future culinary uses. And then some interesting things, some recipes I found for using sage flowers is sage flower pesto. And you'll want to blend the sage flowers with garlic, pine nuts, Parmesan cheese, olive oil, and a pinch of salt to make a unique pesto. And you can use this on pasta or as a spread on sandwiches. And you can make sage flower cream sauce and saute minced garlic in butter. Add chopped sage flowers and then stir in the cream. Simmer until thickened slightly. Season with salt and pepper and serve over pasta or chicken. And then you can make fried sage flowers and dip the sage flowers in a light batter and fry them until crisp. And this can be served as an appetizer or a snack with a dipping sauce. And you can also make sage flower vinegar and pack a clean jar with fresh sage flowers. Then cover with white wine vinegar. Let the mixture sit for 2 to 4 weeks, strain, and then use the infused vinegar in dressings, marinades, or sauces. And I wanted to know if the different kinds of sage have different tasting flowers, because I have two. I have a common sage in garden number 1, and I believe I have a Mexican sage up here by my place in this garden. And so I found out that different types of sage do have flowers with varying flavors and aromas, although they all typically retain the same characteristics of the sage, which is a savory, slightly peppery, and aromatic flavor. The common sage, the flowers are mildly peppery and somewhat earthy, very similar to the leaves but less intense, and they are great for culinary uses where the subtle sage flavor is desired. And pineapple sage has a sweet, fruity fragrance that resembles pineapple, with bright red flowers that add a pop of color and a mild, fruity flavor to dishes. And these are excellent in desserts, cocktails, and salads. And then Russian sage, even though this is not a true sage, its flowers are edible and it offers a slightly minty, sage-like flavor, and they are more decorative than culinary, but can be used as garnishes or to add a mild flavor to dishes. And then there's clary sage, and the flowers have a more herbal, slightly bitter taste. They are less commonly used in cooking, but can be used for medicinal properties in making bitters for cocktails. And then the Mexican sage. And the flowers are velvety and purple with a more subtle flavor than common sage. And they're suitable for decorative purposes and adding a gentle sage nuance to dishes. So there we go. I think, most gardens might have sage growing in them. And now the last flower I'm going to talk about today are the tulips. And I think the tulips are done. We missed them. I know my tulips have been over for quite a while. But tulip bulbs, and I'm just going to talk about the whole tulip because this is very it's just sort of, this is the information I pulled up about it, and I've never really looked into eating tulips before. So we're going to talk about it all here. So the tulip bulbs were a significant food source during the Dutch famine in the late 1940s, and they're not commonly eaten today, as tulip-based cuisine has seen some revival in modern gastronomy. And tulip flowers are edible, and the petals of tulips are the most commonly eaten part, and they have a mild, slightly sweet flavor with a tender, crisp texture. And when eating tulips, it's important to make sure they have not been treated with pesticides or any other chemicals. So it's best to use flowers that you have grown yourself, or that they have been grown organically. And the culinary uses for petal tips or tulip petals are salads. You can add the fresh petals to salads for a splash of color and a mild bean-like flavor. And for garnishes, you can use the whole petals or chopped tulip petals as an edible garnish on plates or atop desserts for an elegant touch. And you can stuff them. Similar to stuffed blossoms, tulip petals can be filled with herbed cheeses, grains, or a mix of vegetables and served as an appetizer. And I'm not sure how you do that. Like, do you just take the whole tulip top? It's something I didn't quite look into because, yeah, how are you stuffing that? Um, and then the desserts, you can make candied tulip petals that can be used to decorate cakes or other sweet treats, or dipped in chocolate for a unique confection. And as always, be cautious with any edible flower. If you have any pollen allergies or are sensitive to new foods, take some precautions. And there are many types of tulips, and while all are technically edible, the taste can vary. So it's a good idea to taste a small amount before using them extensively in cooking. And so now to preserve them, you can dry the petals and use it as a decorative element in dishes, and you can sugar them for uses in desserts. And you can brush the tulip petals with egg whites and coat them with fine sugar, and then dry them to be used as a candied decoration. And so when using tulips in culinary preparations, it's often the visual appeal that's the most valued, bringing a unique and beautiful element to the dishes that is sure to impress. And so then I wanted to know, are daffodil flowers edible? And they are not. They are actually toxic. So they have some compounds in them that can cause severe nausea, vomiting, and other digestive upset if ingested. And daffodils belong to the genus Narcissus, and all parts of the plant are considered poisonous, including the bulbs, leaves, and flowers. So I'm just putting that out there. And even something that I didn't know, when you're handling daffodils, because I have them in my garden also, and they're beautiful as cut flowers, and I've even, buy them at the store. It's important that you handle them with care, especially around pets and young children who might accidentally ingest it. And you should always wash your hands after handling daffodils, especially before eating or touching food. And it's very crucial to differentiate between edible flowers and those that are toxic, like daffodils, especially when foraging or choosing flowers for culinary use. And always verify the edibility of any plant before consuming it, especially when dealing with flowers, as many can look similar but have different properties. Um, and so I think I'm going to end it there on that cautionary note. Before you go out and make some dishes, double check to make sure they are edible. And I hope everyone is having a lovely week. I think it's been here in BC, it's been very cold and rainy, but I think it's sunny today and it looks like a beautiful day. So I'm going to get out and into the garden. And I hope everyone else has a chance to be spending time in their garden and growing some lovely edible flowers. And I will talk to you next week. Thank you for joining me for this episode of In the Garden with Susan. I hope you're enjoying the Flower Power series. And as we look at all the different edible flowers, you can find this podcast and others at Spotify, Podchaser, Radio Public. It's on my Rumble channel. It's on my YouTube channel. And you can always find it at my website at www.gardenfairybotanicals.ca. I look forward to chatting with you next week when we will continue on our journey through the edible flowers.